Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Debris. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Brian going into the office, Langley, and he's talking to Maddox. Obviously, it's first about, what they know about who Anson is, his previous history, with the military, how he disappeared like 6 years ago, and obviously there's still a big gap in between his disappearance then and how he got mixed up in a group like Influx. They've got a better understanding of Influx just being this recently formed group. They never really specified how recent it was made, but basically a group that, formed because of the debris and stuff like that. So it begs the question why he disappeared all those years ago, because the spaceship was only found out about 3 years ago, not unless there's an even deeper, darker element to this, that there's some people who knew way before then, because scientists didn't find out until 3 years ago, because remember, it even replayed at the beginning. Finola says her dad was the first scientist the government let know what was what. So who knows how long the government's been sitting on this, so it could go further back than we're kind of giving it credit for, but regardless. But like I said, still not a lot on Influx beyond that, and how Anson got mixed up with them. Nothing more on George Jones. But what I thought was really interesting is when Brian was like, oh yeah, also Finola, I have a feeling Finola and Ferris know about George. And Maddox is like, how do you know? He's like, just intuition. I thought, because the fact is that he said, I think, and not saying I know, meant okay, so he's leaving it vague enough to kind of give them some idea that maybe they know, maybe not, but I'm just guessing that they know. I figured that because he said that word specifically, I think, made me think Finola must have signed off on this. They probably want to give Maddox just enough leeway and rope to kind of hang himself with, in the sense that maybe they give him enough see what he ultimately decides to do. But ultimately, Brian brings it up to Finola and tells her, yeah, I told Maddox. And it's she had no part of that conversation. Because for him, it's he doesn't want Maddox to be completely screwed over. Obviously, Ferris being more in the know about stuff and Maddox being a step behind. I can't let him be a step behind, because it's until we have 100% proof that what you said about Maddox is true, I can't believe it. Because, once again, it is a situation, it's kind of hinted before, but, yeah, Maddox saved his life. He owes Maddox. So for him, it's I won't believe the guy that I owe, this person I consider a friend, someone that helped me when I was in a very dark space, which we learn about this episode, that he doesn't want to believe the things they're saying about Maddox. So until then, he wants things to be an even playing field between Ferris and Maddox. It's I'm not going above and beyond that, but at the very least, I want them to be on an even playing field, and not for Ferris to have the advantage. Because obviously, she's doing something where she wants Maddox to know certain things, and she's leading Maddox towards a certain thing, but we're not sure what. So this particular case gets interesting, because actually where we started off at with this particular mystery is this dude has got we later on find his name is Liam, has a bag, and there's this random lady, what's her name, Linda, with her boyfriend or whatever, waiting for the ferry, and all of a sudden he starts shaking like crazy, and then she comes over and gets the bag, because everyone else is kind of in a trance, and I was like, did time get frozen again or something like that? And she comes over for the bag, and I was thinking maybe once he transferred the bags over, it'll stop shaking, because I was wondering, it's what he was holding was kind of self-destructing him, but then all of a sudden he's fighting back against his hand as he's putting the bullet gun to his head, pull the trigger, and then they talk about it later on, no one knew or remembered what happened. All they remembered being in a trance. Linda, they found her 6 miles later having no idea what went down. So they start investigating Liam, because obviously it turns out one of the calls was between Influx and him. So now the question is, was he a part of a cell, or what was going on here? Because the fact is, they're reading on his body he was near some debris at some point in time. So what's going on? And so they go to his house. They meet his brother Luke, who obviously he was in the military too, so it's a common ground between him and Brian. What was really interesting, and we never got any answers to it, is he brings up Brian references the unit that he was a part of, and Luke's like, "Whoa, you guys were a big deal." And Finola was like, wait, what? Like, what was that all about? And he was like, it was nothing. Like, Brian's super big into not talking about his past. Obviously, Finola's a little bit more of an open book, but obviously we've come to know that is about Brian. I still think there's quite a bit we don't know about Finola, but Finola's a lot more open to talk about her past than Brian definitely is. There's still a lot of elements to it. I'm assuming, once again, all that talk about his military past that he kind of talks about this episode, combined with that picture he keeps, like we found out about that from that episode with the clones and stuff. What was that, episode 2, 3? I want to say that was 2. So stuff like that, it's probably like all connected. The stuff he doesn't want to talk about, stuff that probably Maddox knows about, that kind of helped him through kind of the aftermath of a lot of that stuff. But regardless, it was really interesting of like the moment like they're like, okay, we're going to get Liam's laptop and then we're going to bounce. And then like as they're driving away, they're like, we never checked the marsh. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, why did we leave without checking the marsh? I'm like, that's interesting. The moment they go back there, because like Luke had talked about Liam kind of being weird at some point in time. It's like he'll be just staring at the wall, and then other moments he'll go back to just being normal and fine. Well, as they got closer to the marsh, like Finola kept feeling weird. She was like, oh, we're not supposed to be here. She kind of references, it's like Kansas, that being in the first episode with the debris manifested itself as that mother's dead child, and he was kind of like, was playing the role of a mother, like being under control like that. For her, it was almost similar to that, except it was stronger because it was more like a whisper. So it was kind of on like a completely different level. And for her, so it's like, now it's like, okay, so this debris is on like some mind control stuff. So it's literally protecting itself, but like, get the hell away from me. It's like, okay. So they start looking into like Caroline, Luke's niece, Liam's daughter, her mom, and it's like, okay, so, you got custody of your daughter? Why didn't you want your daughter? It's like, because that's where she belongs. And the moment they start saying that, you're like, the debris got to them, which also I think speaks volumes that it doesn't have necessarily a range. The fact is, once it's kind of incepted your mind, you're just kind of stuck there. And you're stuck with it. Like, I think eventually, because we never actually got to fully find out what it is. Like, I think when someone brings up some information that breaks you out of the trance, that's what does it. But I think until someone does, or until you're able to kind of break free of your own free will, the trance is kind of like, I think it stays rooted in your brain. So I thought that was interesting. And especially later on when we see Caroline in the water and she's attracting all the debris pieces, you're like, what's going on there? I was like, is she the one responsible for this? Is she the one that's sending everyone away? But then I like the twist when we find out it's actually her uncle's behind all of this, which is actually sad because it's like, because you find out he's the one that killed his own brother for this, because obviously because of his experience with the military, he's angry at the higher ups, because for him it's like the higher ups sends pawns like us out into the to do their bloody work and dirty work, like people who are children of these powerful higher ups and politicians. They never have to get their hands dirty. Those politicians never have to get their hands dirty, but they send people in like us to do some things that we're not proud of. Obviously you have Brian talking about the fact is that he lost some brothers in his time in the military. Even the fact is destroyed families. So I don't know whether he was talking about the families of his brothers or whether he was referencing like the families like we destroyed when we were sent to do our jobs. Like obviously like it's a sore subject and there's scars associated with it for Brian as well. But it turns out like that's what this was all about. Like him, because Liam didn't care about the pieces, because obviously they talked about the fact that he's looking on these conspiracy sites about alien spaceship and stuff like that. That's how he got connected with Influx, because he was trying to sell the pieces. He wasn't too caught up on the power. He just wanted to sell them, probably make a good chunk of change, probably look after him and his daughter. But Liam, well, that's what Liam felt, but Luke feels like, hey, I could use this as an opportunity to get revenge, because there's so much power, and for him it's like, I kill my brother, I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. But the fact of the matter is, it's kind of a necessary sacrifice because he was interfering with the mission. And for him, his plan was to kill some higher-ups that are going to be gathering nearby, which sadly, ultimately, I think he ends up doing that anyway because that plane ends up crashing. We don't really, I guess it's like, how much debris he ends up getting later on, he was able to kind of take control of the pilot's mind and just straight up crash the plane. They really didn't go into the ins and outs in that, but I think that's what that's supposed to imply. His niece was able to find a crap ton of crap ton of debris. They also never really went into explaining like that circumstance. We left that open as like a big mystery. Like maybe I missed it. I was focused on the TV the entire time. I don't think they ever explained like what her circumstances were. It might just be like she came in contact with the debris first, and that's eventually. Well, maybe she had such long contact with the debris that it gave her like, because later on Luke tries to use the power against her, but it doesn't work because he was like, it's protecting you. Because I guess like something in her like just resonated with it, because obviously for him it's like you can find the debris. So I guess like maybe she actually made first contact with debris before her dad did. Maybe she got kind of in tune with it, whereas the dad was just selling it. Like she's actually kind of like attached to it to a certain extent. Like I said, they just maybe just something in Caroline's DNA. They never really went into that, which was so surprising. That's why I was thinking like maybe she's a special case, but I guess it's like I said, maybe they're just trying to imply like the debris got to her first and it latched on to her. So when her uncle was trying to take control of it, it's like the debris he was using was being fended off by the debris that had kind of latched onto her. Because I guess like every bit of debris she had come in contact with kind of rubbed off on her to a certain extent. So it was kind of bubbling beneath the surface, that power. It's actually interesting too because he brings up the fact is that he can use up the debris. Like I guess it makes sense. These are fragmented pieces and they only have it because these aren't large sustainable machinery pieces of debris like we've seen from time to time. They're little shards that I guess each one only has like a certain amount of energy charge, and every time he uses the power, they become, I guess, useless. I wonder what once again, another mystery of like what happens to those debris pieces. I'm assuming you collect them because like the energy might be gone, but it might be a thing of once the energy is used up in them, they are just kind of useless. I don't know if you could even use them to piece to ship back together like they're trying to do at Langley or whatever. I don't know, but that was just kind of an interesting development, like, once Luke is found out and he's able to just push everybody to leave, the entire orbital team leaves, and it's like, oh, bye, it was nice meeting you, Caroline. Yeah, we're packing up and leaving. When they get back to the airport, they're like, yeah, we're leaving. Nah, Caroline, she's fine. But then, like, it's a Finola being like, wait, how do we get back here, Ryan? And even he snapped out of it. So, like I said, I don't know whether it's like a range or whether it's a time thing. It seems like it's a combination. I guess at that time, like, he was only using like 2 pieces at a time, so he could only push it so far because he had to push so many people. I'm surprised it took me this long to start using the term push, because it's like, it's more like compulsion to a certain extent, but it reminds me of pushing, like in the movie Push. Like there were people who had those abilities that kind of like that. I'm just surprised it took me till now to kind of start using the actual term push. But I think because he has such few pieces and he was using it in the entire team, I think that's why it probably didn't last as long as it did against Caroline's mom and maybe her new husband or whatever, just because, or new significant other, just because you're more focusing on a small group of people rather than a larger group of people. So maybe that's kind of the justification for it. Once again, it's just one of those things. It's not necessarily nitpicking, like, oh, I'm trying to tear it apart. It's just like, no, it just gets my brain thinking, like, oh, how that works. And, like, they never really went to full of explaining things on certain fronts, But obviously, Caroline had collected a lot of pieces. They were all in that diving suit, and he had like a bag full of them, hence why he was able to crash the plane. And he's making Finola walk away while he's making Brian like pull the gun closer to his head and make him pull the trigger. Brian was fending him off, but at that moment, Luke was going to bring out more, because for him, it's like, oh, I guess you're choosing their side. And it's like, now because it's sad, because like Brian was trying to offer him help, because he's like, I've literally been where you've been. But he kind of references, he doesn't say, but you can only assume by what he's saying that Maddox is the one that extended to him, was helping him. He's like, I can be that for you. And it's like, all you have to do is just take my hand. But Luke was just so angry. That's all he could see was red. Like, he was so consumed by his revenge. I mean, to be fair, he went through the trouble of killing his brother. I think that rage just escalated more and more now that he had the power. I think it's the thing of feeling so powerless for so long, like you're someone else's pawn. Now I'm the one in control. That absolute power corrupting absolutely. I don't think there was necessarily any turning back. Sadly, he was just too far gone, I think, at that point in time. And so he was pulling out more debris to kind of finish things, but then Caroline uses it against him, ends up killing him. It's sad that it came down to that, but Luckily, Caroline saved him. She was able to be reunited with her mom. Not going to explain too much on that front of what happened, so they're just going to kind of let that be. But at the same time, I didn't talk about it earlier. There was Maddox torturing Anson for information. And that was kind of an interesting element of kind of like, it's kind of that, once again, that Inception thing of, if I tell you don't think about pink elephants, what do? You think about pink elephants. Or am I adding the word pink? I have not seen the movie Inception in over a decade. I'm trying to think. Was it that, or was it just elephants in general? I think I'm adding pink. It might not have been pink. It might have just been elephants. I think it just was elephants. I don't know where I got the pink from. I don't, like I said, it's been so damn long. I always quote that, but I think it's elephants. I don't think it's pink elephants. I don't know where I'm getting it from. Maybe it is pink elephants. I want to say, regardless, the whole thing of like, you tell someone not to think about something, but their brain can't help but think about it. So he's kind of using something similar to that. I don't know whether it's the breed piece or whether it's just the technology they have, but by shocking him, because I guess it's connected to his brain, like whatever they have set up, so that basically it's like, oh, you remember this particular thing, he references something, a church, and basically, because he's being shocked and his brain is in a position where it's like, he can't focus to like not think about it, so it kind of floats to the forefront in his mind, and you see it on the screen. It's like, now tell us about George Jones, and that was the last one we see until the end of the episode where Dee Dee calls up Finola and is like, yo, I need you to come back home. And I was like, oh, this is weird. And then the moment she's like, yeah, I need you, it's like, well, have you called your sponsor? No, I need you. I'm like, she's being forced to bring you back home. And then at the same time, Brian gets a call from Maddox saying, we got information. And end up finding out like, oh, I want you and Finola to go to this particular place. We kind of find out, oh, it's because they find out that that's where George is. But it turned, like, obviously, Dee Dee passes on a certain message, which Finola's like, wait, what? And that message ended up being something from their childhood. It says, like, yeah, if there's trouble or something, this particular message. Ferris didn't catch on, so it was simply a situation of, like, well, thank you. So it kind of goes back to, like, so I guess whatever it is that's going down, it's something that maybe Ferris wants Maddox and the CIA to go towards, because once again, Ferris is kind of leading him down a certain path for some reason. But the thing she wanted Finola to come home is because I think it had to be a thing of whatever's about to happen. Ferris doesn't want Finola next to it. Either this is related because of George or something else entirely. Once again, it's like she's not telling you everything. So either like MI6 or maybe in particular Ferris, or it could just be a combination of the two, is working with George, because obviously Maddox and the CIA to a certain extent have some connection to George, because it's the whole thing of like, well, if he's still alive, he can kind of connect to what we're up to. Like I said, we haven't circled back to that element that was brought up like earlier in the season, that we still haven't cut back to like what the hell that means. So now Finola knows her dad's alive. So was a point to get Finola back home, like, because Finola was like, oh, no, I'll talk to you soon. But I guess it's like making her think like, oh, there's some jeopardy or there's some danger. I don't know. I mean, because that's why I'm like, now I'm starting to think, am I overthinking it in a sense? Because I'm about to start overthinking, and it comes like, do you think Ferris had her say that? And I think that was just kind of like I'm letting you know, sis, that I am being forced to say this. But then part of me was like, do you think Ferris knows that and had her say it anyway? I doubt it. I think that was just her. Once again, I think I'm just overthinking it. It's like, no, her sister was warning her, like, yeah, something's up here, like, kind of be careful about what I'm saying type of thing. So, but the thing is, like I said, she's not coming back immediately, so does that not work in your favor? What are you trying to do? Like, the fact is you're going through the trouble of getting Finola's sister to try and manipulate her and do what you want to do. Maybe it's because she needs Finola to be the piece to kind of draw George out. Maybe that's, each side's kind of wanting George for their own particular reasons. Maybe CIA wants him, Maddox wants him because it's like, I need to find out, what you know and who you've told. So I need you to keep some secrets, so I probably need you to die again. Maybe Ferris needs access to some stuff that maybe he turned them down before, and now it's like, now it's like, oh, we have a second chance to get this information from you, or this whatever from you. Like, he's such a great mind in all of this. Like, you could see a lot of people benefiting from him being out and about and alive, and them in particular having complete and utter control over their complete and utter control over their lives in that regard. So I don't know. I mean, they're God, what the hell am I saying? I'm sorry, I'm a little deranged. Having complete control over what he knows, so that they can take advantage of it for them respective organizations and themselves. So, a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of stuff to keep in mind. I'm really curious to see ultimately where all of this takes us next episode. Didn't watch the preview of the next episode. Didn't want to, because I want to kind of be a surprise. But it's like, I'm assuming we really are one step closer to George. And if that's the case, maybe Finola will have the chance to potentially get some answers from her dad. I doubt it. It probably won't be the reunion she wanted to be or kind of expected it to be, nor will she get the answer she wanted or expected to get. So, but we'll see what ends up happening next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.